So far I've made 2 videos where I take 2 movies that are similar in some way and analyze them to figure out which I like more. I never intended to make this a running series, but I like the idea of comparing and contrasting films with each other. So with all that said, here's another versus video. I've become something of a Godzilla fan these past couple of years, and it's all William's fault. But in all seriousness, I've grown very fond of this big lizard and his plethora of films to choose from, but I've come today to ask a very important question. Which is better? Godzilla 2014 or Godzilla King of the Monsters? Because in all fairness, I think both movies have their fair share of decent and even good parts, while also having some really bad stuff as well. Like, really bad. So it's time I compare these 2 movies and figure out what it is I have to say about each one and why. Spoiler alert, I kinda prefer King of the Monsters. Keep in mind this is all my opinion, so if you do like Godzilla 2014 more, I understand. But allow me to explain my perspective. Alright, enough of the intro, let's begin. Godzilla 2014, a movie that annoyingly has the same exact title as the original movie it's trying to modernize and remake. First off, can I just say I find these kinds of titles annoying? Movies like King Kong 2005 or The Thing 2011 that have these basic titles that don't add anything other than confusing people when they're trying to search these movies on Google. Like sure, each of these movies is about what their title implies, for the most part, but it's still really frustrating to have 2 movies titled The Thing when one is technically a prequel to the other. Yeah, try and figure that one out. It comes across as annoying when you have to make the title of your movie the exact same as the original. It's pretty irritating to have to type into Letterboxd Godzilla and this movie pops up first when I actually want to look up the original Japanese film. It also shows just how little these movies have to offer as individual films. Like they're so unoriginal that they can't even come up with a better title to separate themselves from the first movies. Even though I like some of these movies, it's still an annoying trend that doesn't seem to be going away anytime soon. I also bring this up because this movie barely even has enough screen time of Godzilla for it to really justify him being the title character. I understand that Godzilla is never the main character in any of his movies, so the most screen time will go to the human characters. Which is fine. I'm not going to complain that this movie barely has any Godzilla fights in it, just as long as the human characters they keep cutting back to are interesting enough to keep the story going. And they're not. The people this movie makes us care about are not interesting, and the semi-cool characters are not even the main focus. I don't hate Aaron Taylor Johnson, I think he can make for an interesting lead, but Ford Brody is not one of them. I legit had to look up what his character's name was because I couldn't remember it. And even worse, I can't remember a single trait about him. Like, I guess he's some army guy, he's, you know, nice, because he takes care of this little boy who gets separated from his stupid parents, and he's, you know, cool. Ford Brody is not an interesting main character. Now I realize that neither Skull Island or King of the Monsters have extremely interesting characters either. I'd even make the argument that some of them are even worse than Ford Brody. The trouble with these movies is that the monster can never be the actual main focus. It's hard to humanize a character that's not human, so the drama and emotion of the story has to come from the people. And that's really hard to do when your characters are boring pieces of cardboard. It's actually kind of funny that Gareth Edwards directed this and then went on to direct Rogue One, another movie where the humans have the personality of tap water. So yeah, if you haven't figured out yet, I don't really care for any of the human characters. I'm not someone who believes there have never been interesting characters in Godzilla movies before, or even kaiju movies in general. I just don't like these guys all that much. But characters aren't the only thing that takes up screen time. There's plenty of other aspects to take into account. Like for instance, something positive I have to say about this movie, the music. Upon my most recent rewatch, I actually kinda liked the score. Alexander Desplat was the composer and he really did a great job. It sounds incredible. The opening theme, simply titled Godzilla, is actually fantastic. It gets you excited for what this movie has in store, even though what it has in store is pretty underwhelming. But whatever, the score still kicks ass and sounds great. Usually the music and cinematography are things I love to gush about in any movie I watch, so naturally this has to look great too, right? Well, when I can actually see, yeah, it's pretty good. I think. Yeah, this is another problem I have with this movie. It's too freaking dark. Turn on a light, for crying out loud, Gareth. I truly believe this movie would be a tiny bit more bearable if the lighting was better. Which is pretty frustrating when you remember that most of these scenes are entirely CGI, so that means the filmmakers went out of their way to make sure no one can actually see what's going on! There's a difference between keeping something hidden and actively refusing to show what's going on. You know it's bad when BVS has better lighting than you do. At least I can see what's going on in these scenes. Okay, let me go back to complimenting implementing this film? Well, in all honesty, the design of Godzilla is pretty freaking cool. It actually makes him look like, well, Godzilla, something we didn't get in the last American adaptation. And speaking of the '98 remake, I realized how similar the openings of that movie and this are. The opening credits are played over nuclear bomb testings, and we get a scene with some of the main characters finding the remnants of a Godzilla attack. After having actually seen the '98 remake for myself and having rewatched this movie, it was actually kind of neat to see this film try and be better. It was like the movie was saying, yeah, we know the last American attempt was pretty shit, let's do it right this time. And then proceeded to be about as safe as an American remake of a beloved IP could be. And I think that's the best word to describe this movie. Safe. It doesn't fail as spectacularly as the '98 remake, or even really some of the other bad Godzilla movies I've seen, but it unfortunately never tries to be anything more. It never feels like it's taking risks and trying to be different. That's what the original Japanese movie was trying to be. It took chances and made something that most audiences at the time would probably not be able to appreciate, which is why it got a terrible Americanized version that strips away any and all subtlety and nuance, because I guess Hollywood just loves treating the American public like idiots. I guess some things never change. Basically what I'm trying to say is that, yeah, out of all the attempts that America made to make a Godzilla film up to this, 2014 was the one that came the closest to being an actual good film. But that still doesn't mean I can forgive the things that piss me off. I'm still annoyed by some of these choices, and it really affects my score for it. So with all that said, I'm going to be giving Godzilla 2014 a 5 out of 10. Okay, now let's talk about King of the Monsters. If I had to pinpoint the moment I became a bigger Godzilla fan, it would be this. Yeah, this movie kicks ass. So as I said, I've always kind of preferred this movie over the 2014 one. I've never been able to explain it all that well. All I knew is that I kind of thought this was better. Now, when I do say better, I'm not insinuating that this is a perfect or even really technically good film. There's quite a bit I dislike about King of the Monsters. However, when I think of the things that annoy me with each movie, I think about the other things that don't annoy me as much. And King of the Monsters is really good at balancing out the dumb shit with the really awesome shit. There's a much better balance with the awesome action scenes, which, by the way, I can actually see, and the stuff that isn't so good. Case in point, the characters. The human characters in this are not very good. Some are, in my opinion, the worst. But the great thing about this movie is that it kinda understands this. So these people are pretty simply written and their scenes do not linger as long. I can't say I was ever annoyed with any of these characters, except for one, as much as I am with Ford Brody, because the movie never felt as though they were forcing them down my throat. This acts more like an ensemble movie where there is no main character. I will admit though, that doesn't make this good writing, because we do get one of the worst villain plans in quite some time thanks to the simplicity. And in order for me to really explain how bad this plan is, yeah, let me just explain it. So the character of Emma Russell gets kidnapped at the beginning from eco-terrorists. We don't see her all that much, a scene here and a scene there, and then she's the one to release Ghidorah from the ice. Not the eco-terrorists, she is. And then in the next scene, she starts rambling about overpopulation and shit, and why the monsters need to take over the world instead, and why humanity must die off. Spoiler alert, this turns out to be a very bad idea! I know. I'm as shocked as you are that this very flawed plan turned out to be pretty flawed. What's funny about this sudden change in character is that she never becomes a twist villain or anything, because she's essentially carrying out the villain's plan, but she changes her mind pretty quickly. I would have forgiven this sudden change of character if it actually led to her, you know, changing character, but instead this just comes across like she's just a massive idiot, which she is. Oh, and she lets her kid run away with the very important technology that helps them communicate with the kaijus. You're the worst, and I hate you. Another way you can tell this movie's writing is whack is the way they implement the oxygen destroyer. Now, at one point, the military launches what they call an oxygen destroyer in order to wipe out Ghidorah. Basically, when the thing sets off, it kills everything instantly within a certain radius underwater. Now, this exact weapon was used in the original Godzilla. It's actually what kills him off in the end. And I always thought it was super dumb. I mean, I did find it funny when the bubbles cleared and you could see the bones of the fish floating, but in a movie that I was supposed to take seriously, or at least somewhat seriously, this still seemed to cross the line into absurdity. So I was not very pleased to see it in this movie. But here's the kicker. It's used on both Godzilla and Ghidorah, and neither of them are actually affected. Sure, Godzilla is drained of his powers, but he was able to escape to the center of the earth. Ghidorah is just unharmed. it's like nothing even happened. And that's kind of funny to me. Like, this movie is so weirdly written that its inclusion of the dumbest thing in a Godzilla movie ever felt unnecessary. A literal doomsday device had virtually no effect on either of its targets. So, yeah, the writing in this movie ranges from pretty dumb to insanely mind-numbing. Like, as much as I complain about the first movie, that never reached the heights of stupid that this did. That was more boring, and like I said, more safe. So for those who probably think the 2014 movie is better, I can't say I don't understand. However, while I can agree that the 2014 movie isn't as bad as some of these moments, it never quite reaches the height of good that this movie reaches either. King of the Monsters has so many satisfying scenes that make you forget about the dumb shit pretty easily. Or, well, maybe I just forget the dumb shit. But still, when Ghidorah is first awakened, it's pretty freaking awesome. We see the range of power this character has and how even Godzilla can't automatically beat them. We also get the inclusion of Rodan, and this whole scene over Isla Del Mar is pretty great. We see him fly around and it's really cool. You know, up until the whole oxygen destroyer thing. Later on, we get one of the coolest shots in the movie. It's after Dr. Serizawa sacrifices himself to recharge Godzilla, which, by the way, is pretty stupid, but still. Godzilla rises from the sea, a new big lizard, and is ready to fight Ghidorah once more. Now obviously, yeah, it's cool to see Godzilla power up again, but what really makes this scene better is the inclusion of the original Godzilla theme. This is where I gotta give credit to composer Bear McCreary, who does a really great job with the score. The music is pretty great because it's trying to be its own thing while also paying homage to the amazing music the Godzilla franchise has been known for. One of my favorite film themes of all time is the original Godzilla theme, and so hearing it in this film was really satisfying. Especially during the scene containing Godzilla's rebirth, it only makes sense to play an updated version of the original theme. And finally, I won't go into too much detail with the climax, but I want to say that it may be my favorite third act in any Godzilla movie ever. The fight between Godzilla and Ghidorah in Boston is one of the coolest monster battles I've ever seen. Seeing this on the big screen was one of my favorite movie theater experiences ever. It was amazing to see. The way it builds upon itself, the way we get more scenes of the monsters fighting, again, the whole Ghidorah getting knocked into a building and it disintegrates, oh my god, this is awesome. Now, do I have problems with this climax? Yeah, I do. Yes, it is kind of lame that Mothra immediately dies right when she comes back to help Godzilla. Oh yeah, Mothra dies. Kinda unnecessary, but at least she replenishes Godzilla with her bullshit moth powers. Trust me guys, I'm aware this movie is fucking stupid. I just think the highs outweigh the lows more often. And then Godzilla blows up and kills Ghidorah. He emerges from the ashes of what was once Boston, and the other kaiju surround him and bow to him. And then the credits roll and they play the song Godzilla. It's not the Blue Oyster Cult version, but I still kinda like it. I'm not usually a fan of covers of songs I love, but this is legit such a good cover and makes for an awesome end credits song that I love it anyway. They didn't have to do this, but they did, and it's insanely satisfying. Now, I will absolutely admit this is nowhere near as good as the original 50s Godzilla movie, nor will I say I don't understand where people are coming from when they say that this movie is kinda bad. To me, I think about the time I watched this in a theater and how it opened the door to me discovering this wacky subgenre of film, so I can't say that I hate this as much as other people do. I love this movie, warts and all, which is why I'm giving Godzilla King of the Monsters a 7 out of 10. So if you couldn't figure out by now who the winner is, yeah, I absolutely think King of the Monsters is better. I admit it has its flaws and isn't even all that great, all things considered, but I can't deny the impact it's had on me as a Godzilla fan. While the 2014 movie was my introduction to the subgenre of kaiju movies, King of the Monsters is what hooked me. This was the movie that got me excited to check out more of these movies. It's what got me excited to watch Godzilla vs. Kong, which got me excited to watch the Showa era Godzilla movies that are all on HBO Max. And I've discovered some real gems in my watch through of these movies. So even when I point out the absurdities and even bad aspects of King of the Monsters, I still see it as an important film that introduced me to a whole other world of films. And as for Godzilla 2014, I critique and I make fun, but I can't act like this film didn't have an effect on me either. I watched this years ago and I thought it was pretty fun at the time. There are moments that stick with me because of how cool they are. That airport reveal is still an amazing introduction scene, and I still think the score is really good. I just wish the overall product was much better. Even after watching a lot more Godzilla films, I still feel pretty underwhelmed by it. I understand now what it was trying to go for, but I just don't think it was executed very well. I respect the attempts it made, but at the end of the day, I'm just always going to prefer King of the Monsters, no matter how stupid that movie gets. But let's be fair, because I think we can all agree that no matter which one is better, neither of them had as many fish as the '98 remake.
That's a lot of fish.
Just for you.